Hey everyone, welcome back. This is our second gear testing video that we've done. In our gear testing videos, we try to collect a representative population of gear and run those through some tests so we can kind of test some of these different garments. Our last gear review test that we did was on puffy jackets. I hope you got to see that. If not, I encourage you to check it out. It's got some great information on puffy jackets, and a lot of the methods we're going to use for the jackets today we'll be using some of the same video footage and stuff, so you may be familiar with it and may be able to just fast forward through it, so this isn't quite so lengthy. But today I'm really excited. We've been collecting information about rain jackets, and forgive me, it's taken a while to collect enough garments to feel like I have kind of a representative population of some of the different technologies out there so that we can test them and compare them together. So we've got some jackets from Sitka with kind of the classic Gore-Tex membrane. We've got Kuiu jackets with Toray's membrane in there, the Dermatex NX, I believe it's called. We've also got a First Light jacket with 37.5, a couple Cabelas jackets, one with classic Gore-Tex and also one with their Foremost Dry Plus. So I'm kind of excited to see how these membranes perform to each other, how the face fabrics perform, things like that, so we can hopefully get you some good information. As I've said before in these tests, you know, I'm running these through one test, so this is kind of one data point. So hopefully we as a collective, hunters and outdoorsmen, can work together to get some better information about these jackets, this gear, because let's face it, some of this stuff is really expensive, and making that investment in a single jacket can be a big leap of faith. So we'll run through some information today and hopefully help you guys make some of those decisions for yourself. So get excited and let's get going. So once we've weighed our jackets on the scale, next what we're going to do is we're going to do a run with the jacket. I've cinched up the hood, pulled it on, cinched up the cuffs. All pit zips and pockets are zip shut. We're going to run back here on my wife's treadmill and go ahead and go for a 3-mile run, doing about a 7.5, which is about an 8-minute mile. After that 3-mile run on the treadmill, then we're going to run back over and weigh the jacket to see how much water has collected on the inside of that membrane, and then we'll also weigh the t-shirt just to get an idea of how much moisture is there. The idea being that if we're getting more moisture that's not passing out of the jacket, likely that t-shirt will probably be more saturated with moisture as well. All right, see you guys in a little bit. All right, so for our wet out test, what we're gonna do is we're gonna test how quickly the face fabric on these jackets wets out. This will be a little bit hard to see, but essentially what we're gonna do is just start the shower at high pressure. And then I'm gonna insert my arm into the shower, and I'm just gonna watch till the face fabric stops beating and starts saturating and taking on all of that water. And we're just gonna keep track on a timer here. And that's all we're going to do for the face fabric wet out test. Alright, for our waterproof test, we've battened down the hatches, cinched up the hood, all the zippers. And what we're going to do is we're going to step into the shower for a few minutes under high pressure and just really test the waterproofness of each garment to see if we have any membrane failures. We're really going to especially test the seams on the jacket, really try to drive the water into the zippers to see if we get any water passing through. So we'll do this. So for this test, our hanging dry time test, I've just taken a couple of still pictures. It'll be a little bit easier, I think, to show this than the long videos. In the first picture here, you'll just see a tub full of water where we completely saturated the jackets. That means both the face fabric and the inner fabrics, anything, of course, that would take on water. We took it out of the tub and wrung each jacket dry and then hung it. As you can see here in this second picture, we hung them up. And then every couple hours we took a weight of these to weigh how much water is actually retained in them. And once the weight reached the garment's original weight, we knew the water had all completely evaporated off. As we weighed them, we rotated them on this shower curtain here, so each kind of had a different position rotating through, so hopefully the positions didn't change the dry time at all from there. So we took these out till almost all the jackets were dry except for the Cabelas MTO 50 Whitetail series. That one just took a long time to dry, so we'll just give a final dry time on that one rather than actually showing it on the graph, but we'll explain that in the graph too. So for our stretch test, we put down some orange marking electrical tape here, 12 inches, and what we're going to do is test how much this can stretch. As far as I can stretch it, we'll be taking 2 readings, one across the back and then one across the sleeve out here. So we'll go ahead and do this. I'm going to secure the ruler on one side at the tape, and we'll just grab the other side of the garment, and I'm going to stretch it as much as I physically can. So we'll be doing several things for our sound testing on garments so we can get a good comparison there. For the first test, we're just going to take a standard paint stick, and we'll be measuring these with a decibel meter. And what we'll do is across 12 inches of the garment, we'll be running that paint stick from top to bottom. We'll do this several times to get several different readings, just to make sure we're not getting any erroneous readings, and then we'll be averaging those readings to get one reading to share with you guys for our paint stick test, just to kind of simulate, you know, walking through branches and brush and things like that. The next test that we'll be doing using the same decibel reader mounter is what I call the scrunch test, to give a little better idea of if any internal fabrics or anything make any noise while we're out hunting. But essentially the scrunch test, we're going to take the garment with the decibel meter, and we're just going to roll it into the tightest ball we can. Again, we'll do that several times and take the average of those readings. So for our compression test, we're gonna take this Cuban fiber bag that's 17 inches by 8 inches, and we're just gonna compress each garment into that, and then see how long it is. It'll be a fixed width in terms of the bulk of the bag. So let's go ahead and show you how we're gonna do this. And we'll just compress each garment into that Cuban fiber bag. And this will be somewhat subjective, but I'll do my best with each garment to compress it as much as I can into that bag. I've gotten pretty good at this, so hopefully it will be somewhat similar across the garments. I just compress out air and shake the garment down, and then we'll fold that up before the air is allowed to come back in. Down nice and tight. I can get a little more air out of that. Beautiful. So not a lot of air in there. I'll kind of, whatever's left, work the garment out to fill that space, like so. And then what we'll do is we'll come back in with my ruler, and we'll measure from the bottom of the roll to the end of the bag and get our measurement there. And that'll do it for our compression test. So here's the results of our sound test. This is one of 2 tests I was especially excited for to get the results for. In terms of rain jackets have a face fabric that protects the membrane, and those face fabrics comes in all kinds of colors and textures
and cool stuff like that. But of course, when we're out hunting, sound is really important because we don't want to startle our game. So the argument with rain jackets a lot of times is, well, you put on the rain jacket once it starts raining, and when it's raining, there's a lot of noise out there, a lot of ambient sound in the woods. So it doesn't matter quite as much how loud the face fabric on these jackets is. But like most of you, after it rains and stops raining, the brush is still wet, and I find myself still in my rain gear at a lot of times, and it tends to still be loud. So we did this sound test to kind of evaluate that face fabric. So if that's important to you, you can kind of go through this information and see what you think. In this test, of course, we kind of did two tests within the main test. The first bars, blue and red, are our stick test, where we used a paint stick to swipe it over the external fabric to kind of simulate brush running over the outer fabric. The first number is the average reading, and the second number in the red bar on each of these is the kind of the maximum reading that was registered. The next grouping is the crush test, where essentially I ball this up. You can see that in my methods, and same thing, first number in the green is the average over the balling, and the second number is the max number. So down here on the bottom, I've with asterisks, I've kind of listed those jackets that have a softer face fabric, a more brushed face fabric on them, so you can pick them out. On the far right is kind of a comparison. We have our Filson jacket. This is that classic red and black jacket your granddads wore that passed down through the generations. And in terms of sound, just they're really, really quiet. Wool is a great material for those kinds of things. But as we know, also when it gets wet, it doesn't dry out, all those kinds of factors. This can also kind of help us compare back last year to our puffy testing a little bit, because we used a Filson jacket kind of as our control, but these tests weren't done at the same time, so you can't really compare them completely head to head. But as we look across this graph, we see that those jackets that do have this softer brush face did come in being a little bit quieter for sure. Our Cabelas MTO50 Whitetail series, our Cabelas Silent Suede, and then our Sitka Thunderhead. Although our Thunderhead on crushing tests for sure did seem to be a little bit more crinkly, kind of like our Chugach and the Kuya Yukon jackets, along with the other ones I'll talk about in a second. Though these Kuya jackets, even though they're still a little bit crinkly and the face fabric still makes a little bit more noise for a non-brush jacket, I was really impressed with how quiet those face fabrics are, because then they offer all the advantages of a non-brush face fabric, where they tend to dry out faster, things like that we'll show in some of our other tests. But in terms of other ones drying out quickly as well, of course, the First Light and Sitka Dew Point, these ones tend to be the loudest of the group. The Sitka Cloudburst, the face fabric, when I originally got it, seemed a lot like that Dew Point as far as face fabric. But over the years with washing and use, it definitely seems to have quieted down, both in my personal experience and the testing here. Seems like it's edging down just a little bit on the dew point there. Now keep in mind with these numbers, kind of look at them in general. I'm not running this in a sound lab or anything like that. I'm just using the equipment I have and trying to control for ambient noise as much as possible. So if you see these numbers just have a difference, of a couple, it's probably not going to be able to be definitive in telling us what's actually quieter there. But if you're seeing a difference of 5 or 10 or something like that, that's a good guideline to tell you that jacket's probably a good bit quieter than the other one. So I hope these numbers help you make some decisions. So here's the results of our stretch test, where we stretched the arm and the back of the garment to see how much stretch they had in them. When we're wearing these jackets, especially when we're layering in colder weathers, a lot of times they can be quite constrictive, especially when you consider, drawing a bow or raising up and shouldering a rifle, or trying to even get in and out of our packs. So if that's important to you, this kind of lays out some of the results of those tests. The Kuya jackets, just had a lot of stretch to them. So if that's important to you, these really just stretched, felt really comfortable when you're wearing them, shouldering a rifle, bow, things like that, and it's represented in the results as well. Both the back and the arm having good stretch. I was a little surprised actually by the Cabelas jackets having some pretty good stretch, except for maybe the silent suede in the arm, but in terms of the back and the arm, especially in this one, had good stretch, which initially I never really noticed in these Cabelas jackets. I think partially because the cut in these tends to be more voluminous, baggier. So the stretch when you're in the field isn't put to as much of a test as some of these other jackets that have a little bit more of a tighter athletic fit, things like that, to help cut down on weight, but also to help navigate through thick brush and things like that. But still easy to move in these. Then we come down to some of these other jackets, and they tend to have a little less give to them. Keep in mind this Cloudburst I've used for a couple years and washed. So not sure if maybe that's affected how much it can stretch as well, because it does seem to edge out some of these other ones that really don't have a huge amount of give to them. A lot of them can be advertised still as two-way stretch and things like that, but just not competing with some of these QU jackets and otherwise that seem to have more stretch in them. So if this is important to you, you can take that into consideration. So here's our compression test. With this test, again, we're just trying to see how much volume these jackets take up. So if your needs are a light and quick backpacking trip, you can kind of take that into consideration. These are in inches in a 8x17 bag, compressed down, 8 inches in diameter when laid flat. So of course the lighter weight jackets are definitely going to really compress down. As jackets get tougher face fabrics and get more features like more pockets and things like that, we're going to jump up to jackets like the Cloudburst and the KUIU jackets, and of course the Cabelas jackets are just stuffed with pockets, especially in the case of this their MTO 50 and their Whitetail series. This was their shell for their 7-in-1 jacket. Anyhow, so typically, obviously, as you go up in features, you're going to see more also as you get more of a brushed, thicker face on that jacket. They're not going to be as lightweight, and they're not going to compress nearly as much. So hopefully this helps you differentiate if you're looking for something light and fast that really packs down in a day pack or a backpacking pack when you don't think you're going to be faced with a lot of rain. You can look towards like the First Light and the downpour. You can also see kind of where the compressibility of these brushed face fabrics fit in. This one here I put in as 17. That's the full length of the bag, but really this doesn't even fit in the bag. This is a jacket that is really burly, has a lot of features, and if you're looking for a kind of a day hunting jacket that can hold everything in your pack, this actually is a great jacket. I actually really enjoy it for winter hunting and the thick of winter when I'm muzzle loading, things like that. But in terms of backpacking into areas, you're probably going to want to be thinking towards some of these other jackets that compress down a little bit more. This Thunderhead, I actually, even though it doesn't compress down a lot since it has the brushed face fabric, I tend to a lot of times backpacking take this in and leave behind my regular jacket, like my Jetstream or something like that. So even though it's burlier, it saves me another jacket sometimes depending on the weather conditions. So I hope this helps. So here's our face fabric saturation test, where we tested the fabric face to see how fast it wetted out under the high pressure shower head. Overall, this was a very subjective test. I almost didn't include it, but thought I'd go ahead and throw it in here. It was really hard to tell when the face fabrics became completely saturated, getting through the DWR finished, durable water repellent finish on some of these jackets. So I included it here, but it just they seem to wet so fast within several seconds. Maybe these softer face fabric jackets, the Cabelas MTO 50 and Cabelas Silent Suede and the Sitka Thunderhead, wetted out a little bit quicker than some of these other ones. The Sitka Cloudburst maybe wetted out a little bit quicker too. Keep in mind this is a jacket I've used for a couple of years fairly heavily, and it wetted out a little bit quicker, so maybe that face fabric is getting a little softer, because I would have thought it would have performed somewhere up more with like the Sitka dew point, keeping in mind how subjective this is. When I have washed this, I have made sure to use high-end washes that are supposed to renew that DWR finish. So there's that for what it's worth. Especially this first light storm vapor was really hard to tell in that fabric when it got wet, if it was even getting wet. So keep all that in mind when you're looking at this. So for the waterproof test, I'm not going to show you any graphs. There's not a lot of data to show, so I'll just really talk about it as all these jackets performed really well as I kind of expected. Under high pressure water at an angle, I raised arms, tested seams, zippers, things like that, and didn't have a failure in any of the jackets after pretty thoroughly testing each area. Some of these jackets have been used and they still stood up. The Cloudburst by Sitka, I've used that for a couple of years. The Thunderhead by Sitka I've used a couple times on some backpacking trips over the last year. The oldest jacket in the bunch is that's been used is the Cabelas jacket, the MTO50 Whitetail series, their 7-in-1 jacket. And that seemed probably the most use out of all these. I invested that in a while ago for late season snow hunts like that, and it performed well. So what this isn't telling us though is how some of these newer jackets, perform over time. Do the membranes hold up? Does the company stitching and waterproof seam taping hold up? How do the zippers hold up? And that you'll probably have to rely more on gear reviews. But the good news is for most of these jackets that are new, they all seem to repel water very efficiently. So our hanging dry time test, we're actually going to show you two graphs here. The first one I'm going to just talk about two jackets, and that's the two Cabelas jackets. Just because they took a lot longer to dry out, especially in the case of the MTO50 Whitetail series, which I really expected. We'll talk more about that in our conclusions. But this one just took on a lot of water and stayed really, really wet and didn't dry out completely until 26 hours down the road. I didn't even take data points really in between here. And then also the Silent Suede series took a bit longer to dry out also, but was more in with the other group of jackets in terms of how fast it dried out. We're gonna now look at the other jackets just so we can see a little bit more between how they dried out here, get these to spread out a little bit more on our scale. So here's our other graph here where we've taken out those Cabelas jackets just to spread these jackets out a little bit more on our scale here, so we can see how they're drying out together. The Thunderhead, keep in mind, like those Cabelas jackets, has that brush face, so really seemed to take on water. It was hard to squeeze out that water, but then it did kind of catch up somewhat with the other jackets in terms of dry time. When we look at this a little bit closer, the Sitka Cloudburst and the Sitka Thunderhead kind of dried out totally at about 14 hours. The Yukon here in orange and the Chugach were kind of the next group that dried out pretty much completely at 10 to 12 hours. And then our lightweight jackets, the Storm Vapor and the Sitka Dew Point, dried out very quickly, as we expected in these really lightweight shell type jackets. Drying out totally, definitely by 10 hours. But a lot of these jackets in this lower group, the Yukon, Chugach, and the Dew Point and Storm Vapor, all felt really dry by 8 hours. When these jackets link on and I show total dry time, that's a completely dry jacket. But earlier these jackets are going to feel a lot drier, except maybe at the cuffs and the hem. So for our running test, I'm going to show you two graphs here. This test I was really excited about. Without getting into too much detail. Most of us know kind of how these membranes work. Essentially, they have pores in them that allow water in the gas form to pass out. But then on the outside of the jacket, when water's in the liquid form, it can't get through these pores. So there's a lot of different membranes on the market. Of course, Gore-Tex is kind of the traditional one that came out in the past, to which a lot of membranes are compared to. But there's a lot of proprietary ones in this day and age, and there's a lot of claims out there about pore sizes and which ones allow vapor to pass through better. Some claiming, it being up to 4 times more permeable to that water vapor. So I was just curious when I went for a run, how did I experience that? Did I feel like an accumulation of moisture on the inside of the jacket? And the best way I could think of to kind of measure that water collection in the jacket was just to measure the weight of it before and then after a 3-mile run. To see what it felt like. So of course when we're doing a run, I have environmental conditions that I try to control for as much as possible, but can't control completely. So I've got those conditions here so we can kind of talk about them a little as we look at the results. A little bit this might keep us from comparing some jackets head to head, but also kind of gives us some information how humidity might affect things. So I've tried to line up the jackets here in terms of change in humidity. Unfortunately, I picked a week that I thought was going to be good, but unfortunately midweek it rained and snowed, so the humidity just seemed to climb all week. So earlier in the week it's 36.5, and so between these jackets it's pretty similar, but then the next grouping as I was running later in the week and then into the early next week jumped up about 10%, and then on the last day with this silent suede one jumped all the way to 66.5%. So we'll have to take that into consideration when we look at these results in a second, because this could influence things. As far as temperature stayed fairly consistent. Maybe the most of a drop here in the Yukon jacket, where we see maybe a temp of maybe 2 less, a little bit in this cloudburst, but for the most part we're hovering right around 57 degrees. So hopefully temperature doesn't have too much of an impact. Maybe on these two just being a little bit cooler while I was doing that run. So next we'll look at that next graph. So here's the actual results of our running test. Keep in mind these jackets are in the same order as our conditions before. So here we've got our highest humidity. These 3 were in our next humidity group, and then these 4 down here had the lowest humidity. But luckily in each group we kind of have representative jackets, so we can, I think, still do some pretty good comparisons here and discern a little bit about what's going on. The first number is the weight of water retained in the jacket after a 3-mile run, and the second number is the weight of water retained in the t-shirt underneath. The idea being that in these jackets, of course, that we're hoping moisture passes out if these membranes are doing a good job. So we should have less moisture collected on the inside if the membrane's doing what it's supposed to. So if we kind of look at this first group of 4 jackets here, we see that the Chugach kind of had the highest readings. This was a little bit disappointing because this membrane is advertised as being 4 times more permeable, and it may indeed be 4 times more permeable. There's more that goes into these jackets than just the membrane, how well the inner face fabric moves moisture, wicks it away from the body, and gets it to the membrane can affect things as well. So this can't be just a direct evaluation of the membrane, but I really was hoping that this would have water levels more similar to these or lower. The reason I say more similar is, of course, these have a very small face fabric on these. These are our lightest jackets in the group. That Sitka dew point, the first light storm vapor. So maybe the body's just not heating up as much in these, but that Chugach has a pretty thin outer layer too. This is a fairly lightweight jacket too, just not quite as light as these two here. And then we've got the Sitka Thunderhead, which has a big brushed face on that. Granted, the inner t-shirt, look at that, it's retaining a little more moisture, but the jacket itself seemed to have less moisture as well. So this kind of surprised me. And then of course here, comparing a Gore-Tex membrane and the dew point to that 37.5 in the first light, I'm not seeing a big difference here, enough of a difference to ascertain that one membrane is vastly better than the other. So I think my conclusion to some of this is that one, don't necessarily listen to what's advertised, and again, maybe there's other factors in this jacket other than the membrane that are causing it to retain some moisture, and it's not a lot more than this Sitka Thunderhead, a bit more, but maybe the exact membrane doesn't matter quite as much as some people would claim. But let's move on to the next group of three, kind of under the next conditions. And here we've got a Gore-Tex membrane in this Cloudburst, Dermatex NZ in this Yukon, and then the Cabelas MTO50 with a Gore-Tex again. And you know, here the Cloudburst with that Gore-Tex seems to be retaining the least amount, but it also has the thinnest face fabric. Next is the Yukon, and then this Cabelas MTO50 Whitetail series is a really heavyweight jacket. So maybe we're just heating more, our core's heating more, and we're perspiring more in these larger jackets. It's kind of hard to say than in this Cloudburst, but bottom line, maybe the membrane isn't quite as critical as we think it might be. Then there's this Cabelas Silent Suede. This one's that Foremost Dry Plus membrane, and this one's hard to even really talk about because the humidity was so high that day. I may try and run it again another day, but I had to collect these jackets, and I only had a kind of a 2-week window to do this testing, so I had to get it done before some of these jackets have to go back their separate ways. And also just in terms of my body condition, being able to regulate what I ate, the water I drank, trying to keep things there stable, getting good night's rest and things like that. So hopefully my physical condition wasn't altering things too much. But anyways, take a look at these and see what you think. You may come up with some better conclusions than...
All right, so for our conclusions, I'm going to talk individually about jackets or in pairs or groups to kind of give an idea of what jackets I think are good for some different scenarios. This is by no means the final say. Each of us has different uses for these jackets, but I'll try to combine some of my experiences with these testing to give you guys a better idea about what jackets might fit the bill for you. But first, I just kind of want to talk in general about the testing. I was really excited, for instance, to do the running test. I really wanted to know if some of these newer membranes were doing a much better job than the original Gore-Tex. And overall, I'd say the answer is largely no. I feel like the Gore-Tex still competed really well in terms of getting rid of perspiration during the running test. And if anything, maybe the thickness of the face fabric had a little bit more to do with it, in just possibly how much the body was heating up, and thus, of course, giving off more perspiration that didn't escape the jacket. So again, go back and look at those results, but largely as I'm talking through these jackets and stuff, I don't think that's going to be a huge factor. I'm going to look more at things like how noisy are these jackets, how lightweight are they, how compressible are these jackets. So come and join me here as we just kind of go through these jackets a few at a time, and tell what the qualities are that I think are good for different situations. And like a lot of hunting gear, I don't think there's just one answer to fit the bill, but each of these will kind of fit some different scenarios and stuff for you. So let's have a look. So first up are our lightest weight jackets, the First Light Storm Vapor and the Sitka Dew Point jacket. These jackets are the lightest weight, they're the most compressible, they dry out really rapidly. The best times I think for using these jackets are when we least expect rain. The reason for that being is that these jackets tend to be very loud. They're the loudest of our group. The face fabrics also tend to be very thin and likely not as resistant to puncture when moving through heavy brush or thorns or things like that. So these are jackets you're not going to be wearing all the time. You're going to want to pull them out for that rainstorm to kind of push through it and weather through it.
but they're probably not going to be your jackets that you're going to be wearing all the time. So I personally have this dew point jacket and a pant. You'll always find them in my day pack when I'm going out for day hunts when I don't think there's going to be any rain, or quick weekend overnighters when the forecast looks good, or maybe a little chance of rain, then I'll have those as well. But in terms of doing a lot out, they're so noisy that when you're out archery hunting, things like that, they're going to be really loud. You're only going to want to be wearing them while it's raining. Once that rain stops, you're definitely going to want to strip them down. And at that point, you know, you're not going to want to be pushing through brush and stuff like that that's really wet. So these two jackets do serve a purpose in my mind, but you're looking more towards early season hot weather, because they do tend to seem to breathe a little bit better than our other jackets in the group. Largely my conclusion to that is they're just lighter weight jackets, so you're not heating as much, and they're maybe allowing some of the vapor to escape more. So let's push on and look at our next group of jackets. So our next set of jackets are the Kuiu Chugach and the Sitka Cloudburst jacket. These jackets have a little thicker shell on them than those other jackets, probably a little bit more resilient in the case of both of these. They're a little bit heavier jackets, so going to be a little sturdier shell for when you're expecting a little bit more moisture. They layer really well as well, so get you into some colder temperatures also. These are just going to be more your burlier jackets you're going to wear when you're expecting more rain and things like that. They still pack down pretty darn well, so don't take up a lot of space in your pack. I'd be more tempted to take things like this when I go backpacking or something like that. But in this next group, I'm going to get into some ideas that might help save you some weight while affording you an even better rain jacket. But if you like wearing a soft shell, these are good layering ones for that when you're out in the woods. Some people will still go to those lighter weight jackets when they're backpacking, because you really can carve down a few ounces that way. But when I go in the backwoods, especially where I hunt, I mean, I can get some early season snowstorms, and it's nice to have a good weather resistant layer, and these are going to kind of fit that bill. They're still somewhat loud though in terms of the noise that they make. Keep in mind that the Cloudburst I have used for a couple years, and so I'm curious if that may have made it a little bit quieter, or if it just came that way. So it may have a little advantage in the testing in that regard. I'm a bit curious some of these other jackets over time, if they get quieter as well with Washington use. My prediction is yeah, probably a little bit. But if any viewers out there have tried some of these other jackets, you know, give us your feedback on if you think they get a lot quieter or not, or if they kind of stay the same. So these are kind of the next jackets in the group. Hopefully this will help you decide if these might fit the bill for you. So this next group of jackets is quickly becoming probably my favorite group of jackets. We're talking about the Sitka Thunderhead, the Cabelas Silent Suede with the foremost dry plus membrane, and the Kuiu jackets with the Dermazax membrane in that. The reason being, the last group of jackets that I just talked about kind of used to be what I would use. I'd use a Jetstream soft shell jacket or something like that, and then carry those jackets and only use them really when it was raining. I'd pull them out and they'd do a great job. But they were still a little bit loud in terms of hunting, a little bit crinkly. So from there, I've looked at kind of some of these jackets. Now I tend to run more of an active puffy jacket underneath. You can look at those a little in my puffy jacket review, but things like the Sitka Kelvin active jacket, and then also the Kuiu makes an active jacket as well also, that's really nice. And so I tend to run those more as my jacket. They're a lot lighter weight jackets, and by excluding my Jetstream when I go backpacking and things like that, I'm able to afford a few more ounces in a burlier rain jacket and use these as my soft shell when I need them. So I'm still keeping my weight down on backpacking trips, but allowing a burlier weight rain jacket. So we've got these three here, the Yukon, the Silent Suede, and the Sitka Thunderhead. In terms of noise, I really like this Sitka Thunderhead. It's got a brush face fabric that's really quiet, still maybe a little bit crinkly on draw, and doesn't quite have the stretch of the Kuiu jackets, which are really nice. I do have to admit that stretching in those Kuiu jackets is phenomenal. The trick is this jacket is heavy enough at 25 ounces that it isn't really a rain shell like some of the other jackets we looked at, the Chugach, the Cloudburst, or going to those lighter weight jackets. But in terms of no pit zips and the pocket layout, there's the chest pocket and 2 hand zip pockets. It's really designed a lot like a rain shell that you'd carry in your pack and not a soft shell replacement. But it's too heavy to be any of those. So I feel like Sitka really missed the bill on this one. I feel like that with this jacket, I would carry a few more ounces if they put in pit zips and maybe another chest pocket and maybe even an upper arm pocket. I think they would have a great soft shell replacement jacket that would be amazing. And instead, it's a great jacket. I'm just not quite as impressed with it. And anytime I'm using it out in the slushy snow or rain on a backpacking trip, since I'm wearing it so much, it doesn't have the pockets that I want. I'm wishing that I had my soft shell jacket on. But then again, I don't want to double up on weight with a heavy soft shell and a heavy rain jacket. That's where this Yukon may fit the bill for a lot of people. Has a wonderful pocket layout, has pit zips on it as well. So really, this is a great jacket. Other than potentially the noise, it is just a little bit louder. But I'd be curious over the use if it would quiet down just a little bit, maybe even more like this Thunderhead, and then be able to use completely as your soft shell replacement on your backpacking trips. So for backpacking, those kinds of things, I'm really liking these kinds of jackets. For day hunting and things like that, I still tend to more just wear my soft shell jacket, the Jetstream, things like that, and then carry a lighter weight shell in my pack, unless I see that the weather's just going to be bad, rainy, soggy, wet, then a lot of times I'll just layer up right from the get-go with an active jacket and one of these rain jackets. Don't have a lot of experience with the Cabelas one, but in terms of looking at it, I think that this Silent Suede would kind of fit a very similar build or bill as these other ones. It is a little bit heavier from the get-go, peaking up at a little over 30 ounces versus about 25 ounces in these other two. So this is a group of jackets that I like. If you like that idea of going with a more active jacket, you can carve your ounces down and then just use these as more of a soft shell replacement if that's what you're looking for. All right, our last jacket I'm kind of putting in a group of its own, and that's the Cabelas MTO 50 Whitetail series. There's different jackets in this. They have a lighter weight kind of rain shell jacket. This one specifically is kind of their 7-in-1 jacket. It comes with a big puffy jacket that zips into it. It's kind of a great system for day hunting and road hunting and all those kinds of things. It's a much burlier jacket, has a plethora of pockets. I mean, you won't even need a backpack with this jacket. It swallows so much. So this is a good late season jacket when it's wet and slushy and snowy. It's going to be warmer, but it still has the pit zips in it to kind of cool down, things of that nature. Very, very quiet brush shell on this jacket. But once you get it wet, remember, it's just not going to dry out. It's going to stay wet for a long time, so you better be getting back someplace that has a fire to help dry it out or things like that. It's not going to be your go-to jacket for backpacking trips and lightweight hunting like that. But it'll work for archery and muzzle loading as well. It's very quiet, doesn't make a lot of noise. So has some good advantages there, even though it's a heavy jacket. So it has its good uses. It's just not going to be that lightweight backpacking jacket or jacket that you throw in your pack every single day. It's gonna kind of weigh you down. But for what it's used for, I find it a great jacket and works really well. Hello all, thanks for watching my video. I know it's a lot of information packed in there, and I hope most of you had a chance to wade through it. If any of you are like me, you get really excited about this gear and what it can and can't do and how they compare to each other. And sometimes it's hard in the claims that all these companies are making. You don't know what's actually true or not. So the review boards definitely help. There's some great review boards out there that will give you good information about this gear. But hopefully some of these tests too will help you kind of look at and compare and contrast some of this gear. I wish I had one magic bullet rain jacket that I could say is just the best, but they all each kind of have their own advantages and disadvantages. So hopefully this though helps you to make decisions for your style of hunting and what will work for you. And otherwise, I hope you have a great day. Good hunting.